Today, we're continuing our season 2 theme of looking at how our styles as a leader influence the environment we create for our teams. And really excited to have my second ever guest on the podcast today, which is Shari Frank. And she's the Vice President of Human Resources for a large engineering firm that I work with. And I've gotten to know Shari pretty well over the last couple of years, just had some really great conversations around leadership and leadership development. And so during my last visit to the Kansas City area, I had the opportunity to take my show on the road and sit down with Shari to talk about a few things. And so I'll cut over to the episode in just a moment, but really two main topics we dug into. One, I've had the opportunity to really work closely with Shari on leadership development and designing programs that really have an impact, a long-lasting and deep impact on leadership. And the other piece that we talk through that's always been a topic I've noticed that Shari is passionate about is the idea of leadership agility, which I think has some really interesting connections to the various styles of leadership we have available to us. And when I think about the various styles that we could exhibit as a leader, the idea of leadership agility for me is really about choosing the right style for the right situation. And so a really fun topic that Shari and I had the opportunity to explore was this idea of leadership agility. So enjoy. It's the Leading on Purpose podcast, helping leaders, teams, and organizations lead more intentionally, effectively, and with purpose. Thank you so much, Shari, for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited.
Yeah, appreciate it. Second guest and first time I've taken my show on the road.
Wow.
So excited to have you on the podcast.
Thank you. I am honored, really honored to be invited.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. Why don't you remind me your role currently and maybe how you got into HR?
Wow. Okay. So
loaded question.
Current role. So I'm the Vice President of Human Resources for an architecture engineering consulting firm and have been here for, goodness, a little over 2 years. And just really oversee everything HR related, compensation, benefits, talent acquisition, the entire employee life cycle, everything that touches that. Goodness, what got me into HR? I think I've just always been really drawn to and interested in, psychology to begin with. That was, I got my bachelor's in psychology. And so just...
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Bachelor's in psychology, just how the mind works and how people work. And really just, I observe and I like to watch people. And I was turned on to industrial organizational psychology. And,
wow.
Yeah. As a master's degree, because it was the psychology applied to the workplace. And for me, it just hit. And after completing my master's degree, I learned about an HR program through GE, and really the rest was history. And the shorter answer is, even early on, I had someone who was interviewing me ask me, give me one name or one word that describes you. And the word that came to mind was helpful. And I think I really see a lot of my role and HR's role is just helping the business achieve its goals, helping employees be successful, or being an advocate for them, helping leaders. It's just really, really wanting to help people aspire and be the best that they can be.
Yeah. So at the end of my kind of corporate run, I think I've mentioned, I wasn't directly in HR, but HR was the broader umbrella, kind of involved with talent management. And I think I found some similar excitement about just helping people, find a way to be at their best. And then I think the other thing that was interesting for me along the way is just learning how important it is to keep people as a priority for the organization. And I think HR has that unique opportunity to kind of nudge the business gently, sometimes not so gently, sometimes to keep that top of mind.
I would agree. It can be easy to forget that businesses run, and most businesses are unable to run without their human capital, without their people. And I do see that is our role in HR, is to help remind them, help connect the dots of here's how your people priority can align with your organizational goals, help employees align with those same goals.
Yep.
I mean, it really is connecting those dots.
Yeah. So I got to ask you, what keeps you coming back? Because being in HR the last couple of years specifically has been no small feat. And so what is it about it that keeps getting you up in the morning, keeps you excited about it, keeps you connected to, certainly the challenging work that is HR right now?
I think it just continues to come back to, I really enjoy the challenge. You're never bored in HR. There is always, whether it's COVID or mask mandates or massive hiring, layoffs. I mean, every day you can have a thought around what you think your day is going to be or your week is going to be. And generally speaking, that can be, blown to bits.
Yeah.
Depending on the new priority. So there's always a challenge. So intellectually for me, I find that just stimulating.
Yep.
So you're never bored. But just again, it's that challenge of helping. COVID was certainly interesting because it was uncharted territory for everybody. So
Yep.
You were literally driving a car while you were fixing it.
Yeah.
So that was a very unique time. And I know companies leaned really heavily on their HR team specifically because there was so much people focus with a lot of what happened with COVID.
Yep.
Working from home, navigating concerns about being in the workplace, navigating, returning back to the office. So there was an awful lot that leaders and businesses leaned on with HR. So
yeah,
you know me enough, I guess. I don't have succinct answers with things, but the shorter answer is that what keeps me coming back is there's always a new challenge. There's always a new problem to help leaders solve. And that's just so gratifying and just really stimulating for me.
Wow. Okay. So why leadership? Where did that come into focus for you? Because I know how passionate you are. We've had several great conversations and I've been fortunate enough to work closely with you on the design of some of the leadership programs that you have going on within your organization. Where'd that passion develop as you kind of move through your HR career and got exposed probably to good leaders and bad leaders, but the power and importance of leadership? What would you say about your...
I probably cut my teeth on it myself when I was in an HR leadership program, when I started my career with GE. So I got to see firsthand what really good leadership development looked like. I saw the attention and the commitment. It was a 2-year program in hundreds of individuals that got together on a biannually. 4 different retreats basically over a 2-year period. The amount of attention in real work, real just meaty things that we did. So I saw that firsthand. It was impactful for me. I learned a ton through it. So I think it was seeing that firsthand and wanting to find ways to continue to share that kind of development with other people. That's probably the first answer.
Yeah.
Probably the other piece is there's a lot of things I think people learn through school.
Mm-hmm.
There's the technical things that people learn for their degrees. But generally speaking, people don't learn leadership. And even very few companies that I've seen properly teach and develop people. It is basically, congratulations, you're a leader.
Yep.
Good luck. And that's it.
Yeah. What's the old saying? I promote my best salesman to sales manager and I've got 2 problems. Someone who doesn't want to be the sales manager and I just lost my best salesperson.
Right.
And so I think it's, the reasons that people get promoted oftentimes are not necessarily because they have a passion or have ever been taught leadership skills. And it continues to be amazing to me how far one can get in their career.
Yes.
Before they realize, boy, I haven't paid enough attention to the type of leader I am or developing myself on some skills that I'm finding out I needed to have along the way. Well,
and as you know, that leader has such a drastic impact on those employees.
Yep.
I mean, you've talked about it all the time when we've talked about the Hay Group and various things. I mean, they create that climate.
Yes.
And it's such a significant portion. So working on helping leaders be better leaders is just really incredibly beneficial for all employees and for the company. So that's really why I like it. I find it interesting, and I think it's just super important.
Yeah. So you mentioned a little bit about this a moment ago, just your work over the years and exposure and involvement with long-term kind of cohort-style development programs, which frankly are my favorite to help design and facilitate, because I think the impact is just much greater than other versions of developing leaders. What have you seen with it? Why does it continue to be important to you to find ways to put on more long-term cohort-style programs?
Yeah, again, mostly comes from my personal experience. So I saw firsthand what I gained from it.
Yep.
And it wasn't just get in a room for a half a day or a couple of hours and we're going to, death by PowerPoint.
Yeah.
And then go on. It was such a mixture of different things. It would bring leaders in from that business that would talk about things. We would have case studies that we would be involved with. We had capstone type projects. It was just all of that applied learning.
Yep.
And you as a member, you were constantly mixed up with other individuals. So you had to work with different people across a span of, those 2 or 3 days, and then a different group. So it was a lot of that just active learning. It was not philosophy or not, this kind of esoteric concept of leadership, but it was applying the things that you're going to have to do as a leader, working with people that you don't know, maybe don't get along with, don't understand, different cultures, different countries, different businesses. It just was a very kind of concentrated time to actively work and demonstrate the skills you would need as a leader.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that that's effective in just a classroom style.
Yep.
I really do see the best results come from that cohort.
Yep.
Certainly the program that we've had here that you've facilitated, even as much as I liked the program I was in, this is so much, it's even better just because of the focus on the leadership itself and the various sort of stages that we bring the individuals through. I know people go into that cohort program we have thinking, I'm just going to learn I'm going to take an assessment. I'm going to, do some.
The 5 steps of leadership.
Right.
Yeah.
And, they emerge having to do something really very introspective and deep. I know it has changed people's lives. There are people who have changed what their focus is, and they live, their personal purpose that they wouldn't have gained through that. So it's just, I haven't seen, like I said, a classroom setting replicate the kind of impact and the learning that you get from those cohort style.
Yeah. No, it's been a great opportunity to work with you on that and put that program on here for the leaders here in your organization. So when you think about the depth of your own experience through a cohort style program and the depth that we're trying to get to, in the program that we work on together, I think what I find is varying degrees with different clients and organizations on how comfortable they are going deep. And I have my own hunches and thoughts on why people are hesitant sometimes to go that deep and have leaders exposed to something that starts to get them thinking about maybe some introspection, some deeper questions that maybe never been tackled. Where do you see the resistance sometimes is coming from in organizations being willing to say, we want to open up the can of worms all the way and give leaders a chance to go deep? Because I just feel like I encounter resistance at first blush.
You encounter resistance from companies wanting to put in a program like that?
Yeah. Wanting to allow leaders to kind of go to those depths. And so I don't want to put you on the spot, but what?
No, I would, there's probably a few things. I would venture to guess, again, what most people that I think have been through the program here would tell you is that is not at all what I expected it to be. I thought it was going to be take this, this simple assessment, and I'm going to learn some, little tips I can apply, or I'll forget once I leave. And so I think it seems like it shouldn't be necessary, I would assume, is why do you need to get deep with that person? Just teach them how to be a good manager. Teach them how to do a performance review. So I think there's maybe a lack of understanding or appreciation for why understanding yourself and what drives you and motivates you and what your kind of personal, mission and purpose is. I think there's probably, this is just soft, mushy stuff. Like I just need you to teach them how to be a good manager. I would venture to guess some of the other piece is just around, and I know you mentioned this with your previous guest, Susan, all around that vulnerability-based trust, like Lencioni talks about, or what Brené Brown, one of our big faves.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
talks about with daring leadership. It's scary. It's difficult for so many leaders to be vulnerable.
Yep.
So I maybe just even allowing other leaders to be vulnerable hits at something with them. Or again, they think you're going to teach them something that I'm not comfortable with.
Yeah.
I don't know. Those are just some potential.
No, I think those are good call outs. One of the other things I would point to as well is particularly, when you're trying to sell the idea of creating a program that goes to that depth with senior leaders in some cases, kind of what we were talking about earlier, how far they've gotten with maybe out, not having to do that themselves. Right. And so it's like, well, it's very natural for them to challenge in their minds. Why would that be necessary to go to that depth? But I think we've seen and agreed upon the impact it can have when you kind of peel the onion all the way.
It was, even with our recent one, I know we had to quickly adapt when we had to go virtual.
We were nimble and agile, which I want to talk to you about as well.
We were trees. We bent. The individuals that even went through that one, when we did do the next cohort in person, how many people wanted to audit the class again? They had, it was such an impactful experience. Yeah. They were wanting to take it.
I want to be back there. Yeah.
But it was scary. It's always so interesting to be in that room at the beginning and see we're going to do what? You're asking me to do what? And then to see that evolution in just a short period of time of people who have matured and have bonded, and I think I do have goosebumps. It is, and I've said this when we've talked on those things. It's such a blessing and an honor for me to be there and watch these individuals grow and take it so personally.
Good.
It's just been one of the best experiences in my career.
Wow. Yeah, it's fun to be a part of, fun to put on, but I think the best part is seeing the reaction and the impact that it has on people and their lives.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and love that an organization is committed to providing that type of experience. I think that's, equally impressive and important.
Yes.
So we mentioned the word agile a moment ago, and it's a topic you and I have talked about before. And so I think as I gave you a heads up on before we sat down to do this season of episodes, I've been focused on the Hay Group theory, very specifically these 6 leadership styles. And, my last episode, I talked to Susan quite a bit around the affiliative style, which is centered on creating trust and harmony. I think what's been interesting around our conversations, going back to probably even our first Zoom call when I first met you, is just conversations around leadership agility, in this idea that there's not just one kind of club in the bag, using the golf analogy I've used so many times, that depending on the situation you're in, part of agility is being able to know which one is the right club. When do I pull it out? How do I use it? How would you define leadership agility, and how do you think about that?
For me, it is knowing what style to do when, and there isn't a perfect style, one style to use. It's, what's the kind of metaphor that you could use a hammer to put a nail in the wall or create a hole in the wall, but the hammer is a good tool for putting a nail in the wall, but there's probably other tools to use to make a hole in the wall.
Right.
For me, leadership agility is a leader who is, one, so it goes back maybe a little bit to the reason why knowing leadership of self is so important.
Yeah.
If leaders aren't self-aware of what their own style is, especially kind of that gut style, especially that style, and when they're faced with pressure or
the default.
stress.
Yeah.
If they don't know what that is, first of all, then just having that awareness can be helpful, but it can be really dangerous if they're not aware of that.
Yeah.
But leadership agility would be, I know I have to shift or modify my style based on the situation, the individual I'm talking to, business conditions. It is the club in the bag. It is.
Yeah.
I know I need a putter here, but I have a driver over here, and I'm in a sand trap.
Yeah. Whoops.
And again, you could use one club for all of those things, but it wouldn't be effective.
Right.
You would eventually get the ball where it needs to go, but it wouldn't have a very good day on the course.
So knowing that, one of your expectations is for leaders to be agile, how challenging is that for you as an HR professional? I mean, what do you look for to help leaders think in a more agile manner or be more agile?
I would say again, I hate to give the standard HR answer of it depends, but it depends. It depends on the individual. If I know the leader and we have a good relationship and I know his or her style, it makes it easier to potentially coach that person.
Okay.
Because I can help them with, now, in these situations, John, that you tend to come in, just loaded for bear. And you also know this particular person is not going to be receptive. So not just them being self-aware, but me knowing that leader.
Yeah.
It's helpful to help coach them in those situations. But from an agility standpoint, what I'm looking for, or what I'm trying to help, or what I'm looking for leaders to do, I think it comes back to, are they even aware of what their natural sort of default style is?
Yep.
And being able to think about and articulate what is unique in this particular situation, or what is this, how is this person, how do they normally react? What are their needs? What's been the background and experience? And it's just at least to know there isn't one way to do it.
Yes.
That there are some different approaches, but it can be very challenging.
Yeah. It's almost like a mix of experiences and reflecting back so that you've learned from those experiences. I think that's one of the biggest myths ever is people think, well, I went through it, so thus I learned. Well, not if you didn't stop and think about it and unpack it. But assuming that you did that, I think it's a combination when I think about agility sometimes of what have been your experiences in the past in this situation, given these circumstances, maybe even with this individual, married with a healthy degree of curiosity around this situation in and of itself is different.
Absolutely.
It's not going to be exactly the same. So I can pull forward some of what I've tried and what I've learned, but there's got to be an amount of curiosity and just healthy, I don't know where this is going to go.
Right.
And I think those two pieces coming together sometimes for me is how I look, at being agile. We mentioned the default, a lot of defaulting the last couple of years that I've seen, just as, a lot of organizations have faced crises the last couple of years. And one of the default things that I've seen happen is just leaders being aware. Yes, I'm aware I'm showing up in a less than effective manner in terms of my leadership of my team, but the situation has called for that. And so what have been your experiences with that? Because where I've tried to challenge people that I've been working with is like, in a crisis situation, it's the sandwich. But to sit here and think that you've been in the sand trap for 2 years straight, it's like, yes, there were moments of crisis when we need to pull out a different club from the bag. But if our default answer to excusing ourselves of the behaviors that maybe don't actually work very well when used consistently over time is that, well, it's a crisis. I don't know. I think it's, I don't know if I would call it a cop-out, but a missed opportunity to say, well, what opportunity was there to try some different clubs the last couple of years? So what have you kind of seen kind of helping, organizations think through that? Because COVID just brought some interesting challenges and, add to that everything else that's going on in the world, a lot of defaulting. So I don't know. Speak to that.
Trying to think of what I've seen in that area. I mean, certainly in the very thick of things, COVID specifically, like I mentioned, I mean, it was uncharted territory. No one knew what they were doing. No one had the rule book on how
there was no playbook.
There was no playbook at all. So, and I think again, in those times of stress, that's where that default comes in. And certainly in the need to get things done at a certain time, that's where those less, resonant styles come in, right? Where you have to be the pace setter, you have to be directive. As I think what I've seen in a few companies, some leaders were able to make that pivot, I guess, better than others. And I think, again, it probably comes more down to that default leadership style.
Yep.
If your default is to be more affiliative, I mean, it might have been more difficult for them to in fact, I saw that some people it was harder for them to get to that pace setter directive style.
So if you could wave your magic HR wand over every leader you've had the opportunity to support in HR, is there one or two things you wish they would all do more of in terms of their agility and skill set as a leader, something that you continually come back to have to coach on?
Yes. Yeah. I would say there's probably two or three. There is probably one big heading is around just communication or communicating for clarity. Lencioni talks about that, with organizational health. Throughout my career, I continue to see just leaders in general really underestimate how critical and how important it is to communicate everything from here's the goals and objectives that I have for you. Here are the expectations for your role.
Yep.
Communicating to them on how they're performing against those things, holding people accountable.
Yeah.
Accountability is very tough for a lot of leaders. I was talking with a leader somewhat recently outside of this company, just someone I know outside of work and was seeking my guidance, free HR advice. And was struggling with an issue with an employee. It actually was doing a very good job addressing it, but it was getting to a point where the employee was still not meeting the expectations. Okay. And the leader was like, I don't want to be cruel, but this is a big deal. And I know Brené Brown has said this. Others have said this. Clear is kind. It's not cruel to hold people accountable. No. It's not cruel to clearly explain you're not meeting these expectations.
Yep.
Conversely, you and Susan talked about it's also important to communicate with employees when they're doing things well.
Yep.
Catch them when they're doing things well.
Yep. Yeah, what gets reinforced gets repeated.
Right. Yeah. If there's something people are doing and you want them to continue doing it, tell them, I love what you're doing.
Yep.
Keep doing it. So all of those things under communication, and then change management is another piece under this broad heading of communication. I have certainly seen leaders, they come quickly to a decision and they get more interested or more focused on the what and maybe the how, but totally overlook the why.
Okay.
Because they move from, we've made the decision and now on Monday, we need to communicate whatever it is. So what good leaders, I think, do is really understand that it's important for employees to know why something is happening, what the impact might be to them.
Yep.
Help them with, get through that change curve of what might be occurring and impacting them. So that's probably all those things under communication.
Well, communicating for clarity.
Yes.
Yeah. And, not surprisingly, the Hay Group really emphasizes that the most important thing you provide people by way of the climate you create as a leader is clarity.
Yeah. I think you've said, that's under the Hay Group, clarity, it's king. It's king.
Yeah.
You can't have a positive culture without clarity.
And it can be one of those counterintuitive things sometimes when we think about providing clarity. One of the hangups I've seen leaders kind of trip themselves up over is, boy, if I provide really clear boundaries around something, I'm limiting the situation, or I'm limiting the person, or I'm squashing their dreams. Right. And it's like, no, you're liberating them. You're providing them clear direction in a world of just a lot of unknowns. Right. And so I couldn't agree more that whatever you can do. So it sounds like what you're saying is, using agility in a way, being agile enough as a leader. What's the right style that's going to produce clarity in this moment?
Right.
Because each club has a different impact on clarity. And, sometimes it's coaching.
Right.
Sometimes it's visionary. Sometimes we got to be a little more directive and just look someone in the eye and say, we've talked about this thing. I need to have you reset the bar right now on this.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So,
even Brene, and I'm sorry, I keep bringing her up.
Yeah.
She's
great to bring up.
In the I know she's talked about we're social beings. So in the absence of data or information, we're going to make up stories.
Yep.
And they are going to be generally filled with fear and scarcity and the negative things.
Yeah.
And I know she says that she is a qualitative researcher. She's done a bunch of work there. I have seen it practically. I mean, that's if something, and others have said this. Employees rarely, I don't think I've ever had someone come to me and said, my leader talks to me too much. My leader communicates with me too much. It's usually, in fact, I had a conversation today with an employee asking some general questions. And the entire conversation was around, it's just not clear to me about, this.
Yeah.
And it's about communication. It's about that clarity. So, right, from an agility standpoint, not just needing to communicate better, but knowing each one of those different things, you might have to lean on a different style. You might have to be more coaching in this particular area, more visionary when you're talking about maybe some longer term goals, more directive, and when you're having to address a performance issue.
Yeah.
And it's knowing you have it, and maybe within each of those areas depends on that person. So being agile enough to adapt those styles.
Are you still seeing that? When I imagine HR and my work over the years, interfacing with HR just a lot, trying to work together to, help leaders be at their very best. I still feel like in my mind, sometimes HR, their phone rings and it's like, I've got a performance issue and I would like to write this person up and let's get some consequences laid out. Let's get them out of here. Is it still true that the first question that you'll tend to ask or HR professionals tend to ask is, well, have you talked to them?
Yeah. The first question is, so tell me when you explained to them what those expectations were and when have you told them that they weren't meeting them? And sometimes the answer to the first question is, I shouldn't have to. They should know what they're supposed to do.
They know what they're doing.
They know what they're supposed to do. Or I'm not a babysitter. I have too many people on my team. I mean, if it's those sorts of things, then I know, time out.
Yeah.
So what I end up having to do in those situations is explaining, you owe it to this employee. It's actually really unfair that you have had these expectations. You haven't shared with them. You're seeing them fail. Coworkers are seeing them fail and they don't know. That's the cruel thing.
Yeah.
Is when employees are failing and they're not told and they're not asked, is there something going on? Was anything unclear? Anything I can help with? And they're not told, and if this doesn't improve, this is what we need to do. And they're at least given a chance.
Yeah. Yeah. One way I used to think about, giving more consistent feedback, and this applies to some scenarios. It doesn't apply to all, but certainly when I was in the restaurant industry, as a leader, I grew to appreciate what a waste of a shift. If we're going to spend 8-10 hours together, bleeding, sweating, trying to make things happen on a shift. And as the leader, I don't give you one piece of observation or feedback.
Right.
It's like, what a missed opportunity. Mm-hmm. It's almost like it's a waste of time.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If you look at it, from a certain perspective.
Right.
And so interesting to hear, though, it still continues to be a challenge.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It can be a little frustrating for that leader when they are I'm at my end. I'm ready to fire them today. And I have to say, hold on. We have to at least let them know that you're at that point. You haven't done your part of it by cluing them in and helping them understand that. So that's, if I had a magic wand, just helping leaders understand how critical it is to be clear, communicating for clarity, using those agile styles as needed within those. That would be one of them. Related would be all around vulnerability. It is so powerful when leaders are able to demonstrate that with employees, when they can admit, I need help, when they can admit, I've made a mistake, or, hey, I changed my mind. It's just, I have seen it firsthand, and I have seen the reverse where it is, what is, I need to find someone else. I keep talking about Brene, but she talks about knowing as opposed to learning, and the leaders that feel like they have to have all the answers,
right?
Versus really being, and you talked about inquisitive earlier, being inquisitive and asking good questions. That's such a more powerful leader than the I can't show anyone
a
weakness. I have to know all the answers.
Well, a lot of us, you go back a couple decades, that's how a lot of us were trained as leaders and managers just 15, 20 years ago. Dating myself a little bit, but some of those first management courses were largely centered on never let them see you sweat.
Right.
You need to have the answers. You're the source of truth. And no, that's not the way of the world anymore. It's not how you draw people in.
Right.
It's a missed opportunity to create trust.
Right.
And kind of Annie to get in the game, I think, for a good leader is your team. When they step into that new relationship with you, they want to know that you're a human being and that you have flaws and you need help. And, it's so critical. Yeah. Anything else you'd point to that, magic wand's getting a little large, but
I said 2. Now the first one had like a 1 A, B, C, and D, but
okay.
Well, I mean, the other one really, and we've talked about it, is around leadership agility. It really is knowing that you have to adjust and modify your style.
Yep.
That you have to learn. And again, and I've talked about this, knowing yourself first and knowing what your default is. I've said this with my team that if there's whatever the particular situation was, okay, right now, in a moment of stress, or my default style is going to be to do this. So, but it's been some transparency of me saying that this is my default style. So if this is what you want me to do, I'll jump in, I'll do this, but help me understand how you want me to, what club you want me to play.
Yes.
And it was a really good conversation of, no, we don't need this yet, but we know you're there. I mean, I've joked with them about kind of being the mama bear sometimes, but I need to jump in and kind of protect the team when something's going on. But I've been clear and open with them that, boy, in these situations, my default's going to want to do this, but I want to find out from you what you're looking for from me. So, sorry, the longer answer or shorter answer is that leadership agility. Any leader who knows themselves first can kind of check themselves before that default comes in, and can more easily adjust and modify for the employee, for the situation, for the business condition. Those are the most powerful leaders, in my opinion. Like a utility player on a baseball team, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the piece I would add to that is okay, I know myself and I know how I default and I have good awareness around that. How's it landing? Is it landing close to my intention, off of my intention? And, it's something I've talked a lot about is how important it is to get in touch with that and see, I tried this club. Did you see it as that club, or did you see it as something different?
If the leader's done their job, though, with that vulnerability-based trust, that daring leadership, and they have created that atmosphere, that environment with their team, someone on that team, will either come independently, or you can ask, I did this, but I want to check in with you. If you've built that, you're going to have people on that team who will say, oh, that was perfect. Or, you know what? When you said that, this is actually how it sounded. And that really kind of ticked me off. Yeah.
Leadership's in the eye of the beholder for sure.
For sure.
Yep.
Yeah. But, that again, from a vulnerability to even ask the question of how did that land? I mean, that's a really uncomfortable thing for leaders. But
absolutely.
Really good ones they're going to embrace that. They're going to embrace that discomfort, because it's not about them.
Right.
It's about the team and making sure you're doing right by them.
Yep. Agreed. Well, one final question, and then I'll let you off the hook here.
Okay. What's
the biggest thing you're working on in your own leadership right now?
In my own leadership? I will say I love to learn. I said this once and it sounds bad. I like being wrong, but I don't mean it that way, because I like learning new things, I guess. So it's not really that I like being wrong, but there's something about going down a certain path and then finding out, especially if you have someone on the team that talks with you or changes your mind about something, that there's something that's intellectually interesting to me, I guess. I find it fascinating that maybe it's some deeply held thought or belief, like, oh, wow,
So you like coming to new insights as a leader?
That's a much better way to say it than I like being wrong, because I don't like being wrong, but I do like coming
what's wrong with you?
I do like coming to new insights. I've been maybe the process of I had a deeply held thought or belief and someone challenged me on it, or we had a good discussion and I was able to come to a different one. There's maybe like a different way I'm learning that. I don't know, but so continually, as a leader, just challenging myself.
Yeah.
I mean, it is really just demonstrating agility, just making sure I'm not just defaulting.
Okay.
I am continuing to refine, change, modify, what maybe worked before may not work again. So that would probably be it.
Okay. So it sounds like a piece that's also important about that. It's not only arriving at the new insight and seeing a new pathway, a new way of doing something that maybe you've fallen into a rut on, but did I also hear the fact that would also be an indication you've created an environment where your team is willing to raise their hand and say, I think you're wrong.
Yeah. See, this is why you're such a good facilitator and a good coach.
Thank you.
Because the other part, because I qualified up front saying, I know it doesn't sound right to say I like being wrong, but I've created that environment with whomever I'm with, the team, a leader, another employee that felt comfortable.
Whomever.
To have, Lencioni calls it mining for conflict. I mean, to be in a situation where you can mine for conflict and it's not personal and you can arrive at something, like there's just something about that. I think it is not just learning and gaining a new insight, but I can see that there's this trust and this relationship that has enabled this to happen.
Yeah, it's almost like a good temperature check.
Yeah. Okay. I would agree.
Awesome. Well, hey, I really appreciate you doing this and being my second ever guest and letting me come here and be on location. But it's all
fun.
Yes, always great to talk with you.
Absolutely.
And look forward to continued conversations and maybe down the road, join me again on the podcast.
Ooh, I would love to.
Okay.
I'll go viral.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Again, my thanks to Shari. So exciting to have her on the podcast, and really do hope that I can sit down with her again for a future episode. Hope you all enjoyed it as well. Some really interesting takeaways, again, as we think around the importance of leadership development and this idea of being agile as a leader. Don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you're consuming this content. And thanks so much for tuning in. See you soon on a future episode.